shot in the street, arrested, sentenced to death, still protesters continue to take to the streets of Iran. The movement, sparked by the death of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini in the custody of Iran's morality police, is now in its third month. A movement led by women that has grown into the biggest challenge to the Islamic Republic since its founding in 1979. To talk about the protests and other women's rights issues around the world, we are joined today by Naza Alakija, humanitarian, entrepreneur, and senior advisor for the United Nations Children's Fund. Thank you so much for joining us here on France 24. Can you just start by telling us what it's meant to you to watch this women-led movement gain so much momentum in Iran?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been to be quite frank, it's been very emotional watching events unfold and seeing people get killed on the streets, children being murdered. But at the same time, we realize as Iranians that this is something that we have been waiting for such a long time. There has been, protests have been simmering for decades now, and it has now reached a tipping point. And as you rightly said, across the world, women's rights are at risk, and we really are witnessing a frightening backslide of basic freedoms for women and their bodily autonomy. So seeing this happen in Iran and seeing women in my homeland really standing up for what they believe in and for what to gain those rights back for themselves is truly astonishing and inspiring.
And you yourself grew up in Iran until the age of 9, and you and your mother actually had your own run-in with the morality police on the day that you left. Can you talk about that experience and how it shaped you?
Yeah, growing up in Iran, it's a beautiful country. We spend a lot of time playing outdoors in nature. You grow up in communities. Our culture and our heritage is very rich, and this plays into every aspect of our lives. But on the other side of growing up in Iran, you almost saw this growing oppression over the course of the years, where parts of our culture until today are being repressed in the name of religion. When I was leaving Iran at the age of 9, I remember being stopped at customs, or my mother being stopped at customs because I didn't have a hijab. I was not covered up. It was, I mean, at the age of 9, you're still trying to figure out, what toy you're going to play with, what you're going to eat for dinner, what you're going to do in the park the next day with your friends. The last thing you're thinking about is covering yourselves up. Well, you become very aware of your body at a very young age. That's for sure in Iran.
Yeah, it's incredible you were a child. You've also said that the Iranian government is not upholding Islamic laws, but patriarchal ones, that this is really a patriarchal issue rather than an Islamic one. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, look, this is by no definition what Islam advocates for. This is they've disgraced the name of Islam. Everything that they uphold is a play for how they can essentially control and oppress women. It is, women have become, and for so many years, men have been turned against women by being told they have to cover up, they have to, there's certain positions of power they cannot take, there's certain employments that they cannot be a part of. It's become very, very clear that this has got nothing to do with faith or doctrine. This is literally down to patriarchy and power for many of the people that uphold these laws in the Iranian government.
And it's so hard, though, to separate religion from patriarchy when it comes to Islam, when it comes to Christianity, when it comes to pretty much all of the world's religions. What would you say to women who want to uphold religious values, who maybe want to wear the veil, or who maybe don't support abortion rights? How can religious women reconcile feminism with religion?
That's a really good question, and I think it's something that we are still shaping today, especially within the Middle East. I think, religion is based on your relationship with God. It really has, it's dependent on what you as an individual connect with, what roots you in your spirituality and your what what develops your essence, right? I don't think it's, it's still being shaped, and I would be lying to say I have completely been able to, figure that out myself. But I think it's a relationship that you have between yourself and God, and it takes nobody to kind of dictate what you should and should not be doing, especially men.
Yeah, it's certainly a hard question that I myself am grappling with as well. So thank you for that answer. You just said that, one of the reasons you believe there's been such an outpouring of support for Iran is because women's rights are really seeing a regression elsewhere in the world. Can you talk about that more and some of the places where we're seeing that regression?
Yeah, of course. I mean, 1 week ago in Afghanistan, women were banned from going to public parks and fun fairs. In the United States, women's ability to be able to have an abortion has been revoked, and that's been overturned in certain parts of the country. It's something that's happening all over the world, and it is quite frightening. And I think today what we're seeing is so many women being able to coming together and empathizing with each other, because they're seeing this happening not just in their homeland but all over the world. So I think it's it is a public outcry that's bringing women together, not just women, people together all over the world, and it is a tragedy. But I think today, given the platforms that we have, the connectivity that we have, it makes us that much stronger to be able to connect with each other and unite and to fight back against all of it.
Your NGO that you founded, the SAGE Foundation, focuses on education, women's empowerment, and sustainability. Many people might not realize that there actually is a gender gap when it comes to climate change. Could you talk about how you see those three issues as being connected?
Yeah, I mean, majority of 80% of migrants or immigrants are women and children. And that disproportionately, look, when you're forced to immigrate from your homeland, and especially in very difficult conditions, you are exposed to issues such as rape. As women in certain parts of the world, it is harder for you to be able to get employment and to to be able to take care of yourself and your children. So it is women that are adversely affected by issues of climate, and we certainly see that more and more as we see the impacts of climate change getting worse over the years.
All right, Naza Alakija, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you so much for joining us and sharing your thoughts on the protests in Iran and on women's rights around the world. That was Naza Alakija, humanitarian entrepreneur and senior advisor for the United Nations Children's Fund.
Thank you for having me.